I just gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired. Sobriety has given me an incredible life, and I never want to go back to the life I had before.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah. Welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast, where we talk all things sleep, wellness, and health. The Wake Up Call podcast is brought to you by Polysleep, the best memory foam mattress in Canada. Welcome to the Wake Up Call. I'm Jeremiah, and today I'm extremely happy to have Jason Rockman joining us. You're not only a public figure, you have your podcast, you're also a musician, and you've been sober for 32 years. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
That's amazing, especially in that field. So the first question I would like to ask you is, you've had a pretty crazy career in that field.
Yeah.
What was the most interesting gig? What was the most interesting thing you had to do in this field?
It's hard to say. I mean, I've kind of changed things so many times. Like I started off in music, and then I got into media, and now I'm kind of like, I kind of do my own thing. Like I'm which is nice because at my age, I kind of can steer my own boat. But obviously the musical journey was really interesting because there was so many ups and downs, so many highs and lows. And it was definitely the one that I think forged me into who I am. It definitely made me resilient. It made me ready for anything. And the media journey was really cool because it was solo. It was me. I wasn't part of a band. It was just my own thing. But I think I'm really just happy really now. It's funny because I'm not one who really dwells on the past much. Like, it's always about forward motion. So I'm just really happy with where I am today, just to be able to wake up in the morning and just say, hey, I'm alive, I'm healthy. I dropped my daughter off to the metro. She's going to CEGEP. She seemed like she was in a good space. I'm coming here to talk to someone interesting. Like I just try to really think of each moment as the best moment. But I had a lot of crazy stuff going on in both careers, in media and music. I've had a lot of interesting things that have happened to me in both, definitely. Probably one of the coolest things that ever happened to me in music was, getting involved with Ozzy Osbourne and Sharon Osbourne.
Wow.
And, being on their record label, that was definitely, you can't, as much as that's 25 or 26 years almost in the rearview mirror for me, it's still something that is a highlight. If you're looking through something as a highlight reel, it's definitely something that's up there. And, some interviews I've done in the past, but I always like to think that the next, the best thing is yet to come. Like it's not done. There's a lot more to be told, and it's a lot more to live. So, hopefully, you never know. That can all change in a second. But yeah, I think definitely being involved with the Osbournes was pretty cool.
Well, it's a milestone. Not many people have the chance to say,
yeah,
I've checked that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've gotten to check a lot of really cool boxes. I've gotten to work with some really cool people. And I look at it as just experiences, it's just fun experiences. And I like the idea of just doing stuff that feels right, that isn't forced, and that happens naturally. I think when you push too hard against something and try to make something go, at one point you got to really look, read the room and say, okay, this isn't working. Let's try another approach. But I've been really fortunate, to have some really, really cool experiences.
That's really cool. So you've been at Chum for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Prior to going on your own, doing your things, like you were saying, you've been a musician.
Yeah.
I would like to go into how different the day-to-day is from being that one person to becoming that other person. What was your day-to-day like as a musician?
Yeah.
At Chum, and now what's your day like now?
Music is very unstable. You never know what's going to happen. I had taken a pretty long break before I got into radio from music. And I just started revisiting music when I got the chance to work at Chum. I think the biggest difference was a steady paycheck.
Yeah.
When you're working for a corporation and you're working for, a company, you're getting a check, and it's a little bit more consistent than when you're in music. You don't know what's happening. Music is really tough. And I tell that to anybody getting into it. You've got to do it because you love it, and you've got to also really think that you're not going to you're not going to have a life that most people have. As your friends are getting older and having kids and buying houses and starting careers, you're not going to be doing that. You're going to be focused on your music, and you're going to be hoping for the next gig, and you're going to be writing hopefully the next great song. And And you're going to be living very differently than most of your peers are. And that's the biggest difference for me is when I got into radio and when I got away from music, because there was a little break between music and radio where I just kind of did other stuff. But when I got into radio, it felt nice to just kind of be part of the regular world a bit, even though what I was doing was still pretty cool. It felt good to be part of a world where I was doing what everybody does, you know, like I wasn't necessarily running around the world. I was doing, you know, almost like a 9-to-5 idea, you know, like I went to the same place every day. I had stability, and that was nice because I hadn't really had stability in my life yet.
And you're mentioning that, but I think it must be so hard to attain certain level of stability or build, you know, like you were saying, family, habits.
Yeah.
When you're a musician.
Oh yeah. Yeah. One of the reasons why I stopped music the first time was because I was having my son. And I said, well, if I'm going to have a kid, I don't want to be that guy that's on the road 10 months a year, not being there for their kid. So that was the decision I made to step away from music. And I literally went from touring 10 months a year one day to a couple of weeks later working at a Sunglass Hut at Angrignon. It was humbling, but at the same time, I was excited because I was doing the right thing. But again, it's just about forward motion. And if I didn't do that, it wouldn't have got me to the next place. It got me to the next place. And that's just the way it.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, you're absolutely right.
Anyone that has any kind of clarity and success knows that. You have to just keep moving. You got to keep doing things.
And you mentioned something which I tend to agree, the more and more I speak with people who are either well-known artists or people who are accomplished.
Yeah.
It's very hard to have that balance.
Oh, yeah.
You have to sacrifice a lot because there's not many spots there.
No. And in anything, you know, even in media, you know, like you could work as hard as you want to work, but there's only so many things that, you know, there's only so many people that can do this. There's only so many people that can interview that person. And sometimes it's just not your time to do it. But what you got to do, and you got to be sure, is that when it is your time, be ready. I don't know exactly the expression, but it's when experience meets opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, and the two meet. You have to be ready for that. And there's no way to really get ready except just doing the work, you know?
Yeah. And like you said, you have to be ready. You have to have the time.
Yeah.
But you have to have the energy, which leads me to what I want to discuss a bit with you.
Right.
And again, congratulations. You've been sober for 32 years. And you've been in an industry that is known to be really unbalanced and where alcoholism is omnipresent. A lot of people think about their rock bottom before they think of changing something.
Yeah.
Do you need to wait for that moment to change something? Or what was your rock bottom? What was your aha moment that said enough is enough?
Well, to answer your first question, do you need to hit rock bottom? No, you don't need to hit rock bottom to make a change. The unfortunate thing is most people have to hit something. And the problem is you hit rock bottom and you think you can't get any lower. And then right when you're at the bottom, you find out there's a trap door and you can even go lower. So I think that if you have any kind of clarity, if you're talking about substance abuse or any kind of abuse, you know, when it comes to drugs or alcohol, if you have any clarity and you have a moment where you can change that, hopefully you make that change. But a lot of people need to be shown how to do it. And for me, my bottom was, you know, I just gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had, you know, it was the culmination of so many things. And, you know, when I get to, you know, when I'm at the age I'm at now and having all the sobriety I have now, I can look back and clearly see why I got to where I got to and why I had to stop. But when you're 16 years old and you're using, you know, alcohol and drugs every single day, and you don't realize what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you're masking whatever pain you're masking, it just takes you need clarity. You need to be able to step out of that situation, whatever it is, whether it's a 12-step program, whether it's therapy, whether it's a rehab. You just need that moment where you're able to like kind of step away and go, hey, I have to make a change. But not everybody's willing to do that because it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of willpower, and it takes a lot of faith. You know, you have to have some kind of a faith that things will get better, but you have to have a plan too. And when I got to a point where I was done, you know, I'd been using daily probably at that point for about 6 years, which, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot now, but when you're 16 to 21 doing that every day, it adds up. It really does. And I got to a point where, you know, I had a friend that had passed away in a drinking driving accident, and nothing changed. All our friends were still doing the same things, even after. So I think it was just, I was lucky. You know, I had a moment of clarity. I woke up in the morning. And my first instinct was to call Alcoholics Anonymous. I was like, I got to call AA. No one had ever talked to me about a 12-step program. No one had ever talked to me about recovery. No one had ever talked to me about drinking because no one thought I had a problem because I surrounded myself with people that did the same things I did. But even the people that didn't, they probably weren't going to say anything to me. They weren't going to go, well, I think you have a problem because you're 20, 21 years old. Like that's what most 20, 21-year-old kids are doing, or at least were doing in the early 90s, late 80s. It was normal. So I was lucky. And, knock on wood. I don't know if there's any wood anywhere, probably over there, but it was, I was just really, really lucky to get sobriety when I did and hold on to it.
Well, that's amazing. And I think we're looking at the new generation. I'm glad to see they're a lot more conscious about the negative effects of alcohol.
Yeah.
So going back to that, because it's anonymous, right? It's called AA for a reason.
Yeah.
So without breaking privacy or anything, what would be the most significant learning, or what would be the most interesting thing for someone listening to us today to learn about?
Yeah. Alcoholics Anonymous is anonymous in the sense that if someone comes into an AA meeting and shares their story, I'm not going to share that with anyone. But I choose to live my sobriety out loud and my recovery out loud because I know that I have a platform. I know that there's people that listen, and I've, been able to help a lot of people over the years because of that. But I think, if you do have a problem with alcohol or drugs, I think a 12-step program is great because it gives you a set of tools to work towards getting better. Not getting a cure, getting better. Because I really believe that I'm always going to be an alcoholic. Even though I'm not an actively drinking one, I'm always going to have alcoholism. And the quicker that I was able to admit that as like a defeat and say, look, I can't drink. I can't drink like you can drink. I don't know if you drink, but I can't drink like normal people. Like I can't go have a nice glass of wine or a beer.
Enjoy it and
no. And that's not going to happen. If I have a beer now, even after all these years of being abstinent, if I have one drink right now, I am off to the races. The obsession will kick in. And whether I have another one in a month or in a week or in a day, the obsession will start the minute I have one. I believe that. Maybe and for me, it's like, I'm not messing with that. It's been good up till now, and I have no desire to get back there.
And you're probably right, because you've been sober for 32 years.
Yeah.
So who am I to say, oh, I think I know that better?
I have lots of people that have told me, oh man, it's been so long. You can have a drink. Like, no problem. Like, why would you have an issue? You know what? Maybe I could. I don't know.
Why take the risk?
I'm not going to take the risk.
Why take
would
the
I?
risk?
Well, it's worked. It's like, I always use this analogy with people. If you have an allergy to fish, if you eat a piece of fish and you know that your throat's going to close up, you're going to break out in hives, sweats, you're going to get sick to your stomach, you're going to have to get your stomach pumped, you're not going to eat fish, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm allergic to alcohol. And that analogy stays with me, and I'm like, fine with that. It's good.
I really like that. And I think there's a lot of misconception about AA. A lot of people think it's like more of a social gathering
Well, I mean, there is a social aspect to it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that social aspect is part of helping each other, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, and it's kind of an aha moment for me because I don't suffer from that. I can have 2-3 drinks and not drink for 2 weeks. I'm actually not going to drink for the whole month of October because, I feel like it and I want to get back in shape.
Right.
So there's probably a lot of misconceptions about people going there, going to rehab. Unfortunately, go back into alcoholism. So you've probably seen a lot of people. What are the traps and how to avoid them? And I think you have already given us great advice, but what would be the couple of things people should be aware of? Like
to avoid going back to drinking if you have an issue? Well, I think you have to stay away from it. I think you have to change. You have to change your life. You have to change your circles of friends. There's a lot of things you need to change when you take sobriety seriously, at least for me. I think you need to have that psychic change. You have to have that change in your head where you're like, this can't happen anymore. Like, I can't do this anymore. But it's that obsession. Alcoholics have this obsession that they want to drink, and they can drink. And it's like, when I was saying admitting that I'm an alcoholic, like admitting defeat, being able to say, my ego has to be able to take the fact that I can't do something. And, especially men, like our egos are huge. And in our minds, like, well, we can do anything. You're not going to tell me I can't do that. Well, yeah, I can't do that. And the faster I was able to admit that, the easier my life got. Because it's okay to say I can't do something. Like I'm not able to do that. And I don't want to try it. At this point, I do not want to try it. It's like, that's okay. There's a lot of other people out there that can enjoy it. I don't want to do it. Sobriety has given me an incredible life, and I never want to go back to the life I had before. Because as much fun as I had partying, I would never trade my best day drinking for my worst day sober, ever.
I think anybody who stopped drinking for about a month starts seeing the noticeable difference.
Yeah, and the thing is that what happens is in your mind, you're like, I can't ever drink again. And that is a heavy, heavy thing to process. Yeah. But if you take it a day at a time, which is something, people in AA preach and most people will tell you, like, one day at a time. Don't think about 4 years from now. Don't think about 6 years from now. Think about today. Get through today. Put your head on your pillow at the end of the day and say, I'm done. I didn't drink today. And you wake up the next day and just do it all over again. And because I was able to take that philosophy, next thing you know, it's like 32 years. Like, holy shit, what happened?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And celebrating these victories along the way rather than focusing on, I'm never going to drink again.
Yeah, just the stupidity you do when you're drinking. And when, like a lot of people don't know what blackout drinking is. Like when you have a blackout, I didn't know what a blackout was until I, got sober. And then people were like, do you know what a blackout is? And I'm like, well, I mean, sometimes I've fallen asleep on my couch and I would wake up in my bed and not remember how I got there. And that's a blackout. And I would lose like hours of my night sometimes.
Literally not remembering.
I remember anything. And I have friends of mine saying, do you remember what you did last night? I'm like, no. Like, oh man, you were like doing this, you were doing that. And like that's scary. And, in a blackout, you could do anything, I've heard stories, where people have, been drinking in blackouts, woken up with blood on their hands and like, it's like, what happened? And then, next thing you know, you're in jail for homicide. It's like, that's terrifying. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have a couple of beers to, take the edge off and wake up. Like, who knows what can happen? And that's, for me, being someone who is a blackout drinker too, that's like, no bueno.
Yeah, especially if you have access to a car, a license,
anything.
Think you're...
You don't know what can happen. So it's really, when you start to really think about what could happen, it gets very scary. And then you say to yourself, well, why would anybody chance that? But that's the obsession. That's the mental obsession that alcohol will have over someone who doesn't have, control on it.
And the outcome, not drinking, have just so much positive.
Yeah, definitely. For me, yes.
I want to go full circle around that because you've had a pretty busy career. You've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And time is one thing, but I strongly believe that time without energy is a bit wasted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tell me about the effects on your health, your sleep, wellness in general of not drinking, especially from the moment, I know it's a while back, but you probably do remember how your body changed, how your
everything.
mental state changed.
I'm 53 and I don't think I would have the energy to do all the things that I do. And I do a lot of things sometimes in a month and in a year. Like I'll look back, what the great thing about social media is, you're posting and then you can just track and you get memories and you're like, oh my God, like look what I did in a year. And I don't think I would be able to do all those things still if I would have continued using and drinking the way I was. There's no way. It just takes a lot of energy. Like I'll go somewhere. I was at a music festival 2 weeks ago in northern Quebec, and it's a really cool music festival that lasts 4 days. There's pop-up shows all over. It takes over this entire little town. But I saw people getting up that had been partying, and I just look at them and I'm like, I'm tired from just staying up late. I can't imagine what it would be like. Yeah, it's just like, no, I don't want to do that. It's like, and it's, I definitely, when I stopped drinking, I noticed a huge difference. My energy, obviously I slept better. I mean, you can't even compare. It was interesting the first couple of months because, you'd have these dreams where you would think you were drinking, and that's weird. Like you'd wake up and you'd be like, I drank, and you're like, oh no, I didn't. That was a dream. And that's like a weird thing. That would, that happens. It's very, very common for people that get sober, that they have these weird dreams that they wake up and they still think they're living their old life. And that's pretty crazy.
I think balance is key.
Yeah.
And obviously when you're an alcoholic or use drugs, it takes a big amount of space in your life.
Yeah.
How do you compensate for life right now? What helps you staying balanced? What help you, control that?
Well, I mean, I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I'm married, and I have a dog, and I've got a podcast and I've got a full-time job and I've got a bunch of Comic-Cons that I'm a spokesperson for, and I've got a gig, at Playground Poker. Like I've got all these things that I balance and I juggle. So for me, it's all about time management. And when my time management is off, everything suffers. Probably the thing that suffers the most is sleep, but I think it's really important to like time management is so important. As you get older, it's the one commodity that you can't get back. You take advantage of it. And you I shouldn't say take advantage, but you take it for granted when you're young because you think it's always going to be there. And it's so cliche, but as you get older, you realize like that's the one thing that I hate is time, like getting lost on something stupid. Even today coming here, I was supposed to be here at 9:30. I knew we were starting at 10. I knew I'd be here on time for 10, but in my mind, I'm like, I was committed to being here at 9:30. So when I'm on the metro at 9:42, I realize I'm wasting 12 minutes of people's time. And even though it's all going to still work out, it bothers me because I care about time and I care about people's time. So I think time management is really important. And the better handle and grip you get on that, the better your life's going to be, the more you're going to be able to fit into a day. But it's important to not waste time on stupid things. And if there are things in your life that you're wasting time on that don't make you happy or that aren't productive, cut them out. Like you have to, relationships, situations, habits, like all these things that you don't benefit from, you've got to, and sometimes you got to insert them with other things that are, that are more important. When I'm sleeping enough, when I'm exercising regularly, when I'm going to my meetings, when I'm staying in contact with people I care about, I'm doing positive things, I always feel the best. And it's when I'm in a good balance, I always feel like optimum. And then something will derail you, like you'll get a cold and you're like, why? I feel
life's always throwing curveballs.
That's it. And I think it's all in how you can adapt to it. If you adapt well and you can make things, if you can be like water and just go with it, you're good. But not everybody does that. People fight it. And at one point it's like, okay, all right, so you caught a cold. You're going to be sick for probably 72 hours and it's going to get bad and then it's going to get better. Just push through. You'll figure it out. And then you say to yourself, well, why did I get sick? And you're like, well, maybe because you ran yourself ragged. You didn't take care of yourself. You didn't sleep enough. And it's. You're
right.
And I think when you're somebody that likes to do a lot of things and you like to stay busy and you want to manage your time and you want to do as much with your time, it's so frustrating when you get sidelined.
Yes, because like you said, we discussed that.
Yeah.
Before we started recording, I just came back from London today, and just 10 hours of not sleeping properly, not eating properly can really impact your day.
Oh yeah.
It's not a struggle,
no.
But I know that if I were to do that 2-3 times a week, I would need to drastically change some stuff because no, you're absolutely right. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Let's say someone is watching us right now and he has substance abuse or he's an alcoholic and he have this aha moment. I want to do something about it. What would be the most single important advice you could give to that person?
If you have a problem with alcohol, go to a meeting.
Look at a meeting next to your place.
Look up Alcoholics Anonymous. We have phones that can find everything now. Find a meeting and go to one. And listen and try to make the changes that you need to make, because the quicker you can do that, the quicker your life's going to get better. Don't fight it. There's a list of questions that, it's like a pamphlet where people will say like, answer these questions. And if you answer yes to, 4 or more of these, there's a good chance you might have a problem with alcohol. Like those questions are online. You can find them easily. I strongly suggest people to, if you do end up in an AA meeting because of your drinking, it's done. Like, the other thing that kind of sucks, and this should be a warning too, I'll just be transparent. If you have a problem with alcohol and you go to an AA meeting and you start going to a few AA meetings and you start hearing people's stories, you're never going to drink the same again. It's never going to be like it was before, because in your mind, you might have an issue, and you're always going to have that underlining thing saying, I think I have a problem with alcohol. And if you're able to do it on your own, more power to you. But most people I know that end up coming to an AA meeting that have a problem with alcohol, if they don't stay, they end up coming back after going out and doing years more damage. So I always like to tell people, like, once you're here, the gig's up, like, just move on, because it's not going to get better. And it does get better, but it's not going to get better in your drinking career. Like, it's like, retire, retire with the win.
It's like you were saying about that earlier, acceptance is probably the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's actually the most popular question about that on Google.
Yeah.
Is, when does it get easier?
Yeah. It gets easier really quick if you work it. If you put the work in, but I also think it depends how far down you've gone. Like, it depends if you've hit that bottom. Like, I know the minute I got into, when I went to my first meeting and I started getting, like, I was just so grateful to have found another way, because I was done. It gets better really quick, but if you're not ready, it won't get better fast. You have to be ready. If you're not ready, then you're just going to be fighting and wasting your time. But, I like to think that people that do come in, like the people that come in and then go back out, we call them slippers.
Yeah.
And someone that goes on a slip and comes back, I like to think that every time they come back, they've learned something by going out there and hitting their head against the wall. Like, you hit your head against the wall over and over again. You're like, oh, wait, the door's right there. Let me just open it up. But some people just, they just can't admit that there's, like, you're done. Like, it's defeat. Just admit that it's done. And when you can do that, you move on. But the only dangerous part is that the people that do go back out, sometimes they don't come back in. And that's the danger, But I'm just grateful that I got it from the beginning and I stuck with it, because my life has just been amazing since.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Over 32 years, you must have seen a lot of people. I want to ask you, are people who are sober happier in general?
Some are miserable because they're dry drunks and they don't, but I think people are people, and I think it's what you put into it. Listen, I have days that suck really bad, like everybody. I have days where I'm like, what am I doing? I don't, there's days where I look at myself, I'm like, who the do you think, excuse me, can I swear? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who the do you think you are? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is this life you've created? Like, you're a farce, you're a facade. Like, everybody has those moments where they don't think that they can do anything, and that they're not adequate, or we all have those days. Just about a year and a half ago, I got let go from my radio job, and I was there for almost 14 years, and I did a really good job at my job. I did a good job. I represented the place I worked at well. I built a pretty good name for myself. So when I was let go, as much as I took it in stride and I practiced everything I was taught to do when those things happen, it's still a blow to your ego, and still something you have to process. And it's still like a public execution. A regular person that goes and loses their job or gets let go from their job goes home. They tell their family, they tell their friends, they get over it. When you're a public figure and you lose your job, everywhere you go, people ask you, are you okay? People will give you their opinion. They'll tell you how much they hate that station now because they suck for firing you. They'll say, what were they thinking? Or they'll say, like, oh, well, that's the business. What do you expect? There's all these things. And for me, it was like, I know what I have to do. I have to move on, because it's just a job. And it's always just been a job for me. But it's still something that, you have to process and you have to get through. And I remember at one point my wife said, you might want to talk to somebody about this, because what you went through is, was pretty traumatic.
After 14 years,
right.
Yeah, you bet.
But I'm taught to move forward, because as much as that was traumatic, I came from music. Nothing's more traumatic than that.
I agree.
But I still had to recognize that it was a transition that I had to go through. It was something that I had to work through, and I did. And it made me stronger for it. I was able to walk out of that with no resentment. I don't have any resentment towards my my old employers. There's so many people that work there still that I love. And that's life. Like, sometimes these things happen, and it was nothing personal against me. It was really bean counters that were saying, like, well, that just doesn't add up anymore. And that's the business model that industry is heading towards. So things change, and you got to move with it. You got to be adaptable. And it's just one part of the journey, for me. But it's still something that had to be processed and had to be dealt with, for sure.
I'm glad you decide sobriety.
Yeah.
Because not being on that path, going through such a rough patch.
Yeah.
Might be the moment, the terrible moment.
Oh,
we
yeah.
were discussing
For a lot
about.
of people. Yeah. It could be the moment where you're like, F it, I'm just going to throw the towel in. But being where I'm at and knowing what I know, I'm not going not going to drink over that. That's for sure. Not that place. No.
You know what? People who have been sober for as long as you are, in my opinion, some of the most resilient people I've met, because it's a fight you have to take on every day.
Daily. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks again for coming, Jason.
Yeah, man.
I really enjoyed my conversation with you. It's
100%.
It's pretty cool. And if anybody needs help, if everybody is concerned, Jason said it, just Google, look for a meeting near you. And I really think it's worth it. If you think you have problems, definitely.
Or, you can follow me on Instagram, The Real Jason Rockman, DM me. I'll point you in the right direction. I mean, that's what we do, right? We have to keep it moving, because otherwise, if you go to get help and you get sober and all you do is, learn what you need to learn and then go away and have this great life and not show somebody else, then that's not how that thing works. Like it's got to be continuous. It's got to be passed on. So I'm open about it. If anybody ever has a question, I'll definitely answer my DMs, and don't DM me other weird stuff, because I'll probably ignore it. But
Jason, thank you so much once again.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for listening to The Wake Up Call. If you liked what you heard today, do not forget to rate, follow, subscribe, or perhaps leave a comment below. New episode of The Wake Up Call drops on the third Wednesday every month. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. For all of us here at the Polysleep studio, I'm Jeremiah Curvers. Until next time.